Well, hi, my name is Julia, and today I'm going to talk about applying the capability approach to the context of post-disaster housing. And specifically, I'm going to talk about how the capability to design can help us understand how well people after disaster can rebuild their homes in a way that fits them well. I think that by thinking about strategies for housing in post-disaster, that talks about what people are capable of and what is important to them, brings us to a slightly different perspective on post-disaster housing, which is useful for evaluation and also for planning for emergencies. The capability approach is a framework for development and well-being that is focused on the collective of freedoms that people have to do and be the things they value. And because we all value slightly different things, our ideal capability set will be individualized for each of us. For example, if I value riding a bike because I'm concerned about the planet and it's more eco-friendly than a car, and I'm able to ride a bike physically and it's to some degree socially acceptable for me to ride a bike, and there are also roads that make riding a bike feasible, then we can say that I have the capability and the freedom to ride a bike if I wanted to. However, there are factors that determine really whether I can ride a bike, such as my physical health and the way the roads are built, physically, and also how other people behave on the roads. And these things will affect whether I can realize a valued functioning. Capabilities also build on each other. Some capabilities are important to be established so that others can be fulfilled. And I forgot what I was going to say here. Maybe I should go back to reading. I think when in post-disaster context, we have to ask what capabilities are necessary for people to be in charge of the process of building back. And I've addressed this question from the perspective of what is their capability to design. This is a list of central capabilities, and when we talk about how not only can people help themselves rebuild, but also the amount of control they have over the process, we get to two central capabilities that are most important in my opinion: senses, thought, and imagination, and control over one's environment. Being able to design your home is not just about building it physically, although this may be important. It's also about the capability of envisioning possibilities, weighing alternatives, thinking creatively to solve problems, and being able to project those decisions into the future. The capability to design is also about being able to decide where to live, what services and infrastructure is needed in your area, and how to manage resources sustainably. And it's also about negotiating these things with the people that live around you. And so after a disaster, does the burden of human loss prevent some people from being able to envision the future they want? Does changed geography make some people's livelihoods impossible, and therefore the most basic capabilities aren't being able to be fulfilled? Or does national disaster response remove some freedoms that people would otherwise enjoy? I've developed a framework to talk about how capabilities influence people's rebuilding, or their lack of ability to rebuild. Resources include natural resources, economic opportunities, community solidarity, good health, information, and it's what people have at their disposal to facilitate design. Ability is how well they can harness those resources to achieve the choices of what and how to design. And values influence what is considered a positive outcome, and political structures shape what resources are available and people's ability to turn choices into outcomes. So for example, in a post-disaster context, do people have access and control over land, building materials, and know-how? Do they have experience of ever playing a part in designing their environment before that they can draw upon now? Is there a particular element of housing that is most important to secure, such as a prayer room, a private room, or a kitchen? Is it possible for neighbors to organize themselves to help the most vulnerable of their community first, or to repair a particular piece of infrastructure? in values. Is it important for houses to face outwards or inwards? And do they, are houses supposed to be for the nuclear family or for an extended family? And finally, in structure, do social norms prevent particular groups from making claims or voicing opinions or ideas? I think this exercise is helpful because in evaluating post-disaster housing projects, because it allows us to see how appropriate the responses were for a particular context. And also as a way to see whether the project expanded capabilities other than just housing. But I think it's most interesting if we put it in a pre-disaster context, and if communities can think about what resources, abilities, and values they have, what their priorities would be in the case of a disaster emergency, and what social and political barriers they need to overcome in order to realize those priorities. I think that the capability approach is a helpful concept to look at post-disaster context, not in terms of vulnerabilities, but in terms of resilience and capability. And I think most importantly, it puts people as the agents of the rebuilding process. And when we talk about an agent, we don't talk about what people need, we talk about what they have the freedom to do. So thank you very much.